So before we start, I just wanted to highlight that we have already published a number of guidance documents in the Halo knowledge base. So if you have questions, it is a good place to look. And then you can also raise a support ticket directly from here also if required. So in the Halo knowledge base, we have help articles, and in the HR section, we have a number of articles now that cover the Cezanne system specifically. So we will be issuing the Cezanne access link with the Go Live comms. When you click into the link, you will have the option to enter a username and password. This will be relevant to people who I've mentioned before that have a second logon if you're a supervisor or if you have some kind of additional access. It will also be relevant to people who are maybe accessing Cezanne from a non-NAS computer. But for everybody else, as long as you are using your NAS computer, then you can use the single sign-on functionality, which is accessed by the Enterprise Logon button down here. So if you're a single sign-on user, you don't need to enter the username or password. You can use Enterprise Logon. For the purpose of this demonstration, though, I am actually going to use a logon and go into the system. All right, so when you first log into the Cezanne system, you will be presented with a home page. The screen will look something like this. There might be some different tiles showing to what you can see here today. In summary, though, you will see a number of quick links to areas of the system that might be of use to you. So that's these areas down this side. And then you will also see some other tiles. So this will include, for example, things like any tasks that are outstanding for you to complete. You might see a summary of who is off in your team. I'm not seeing that here because I'm not a manager on this logon. And then a summary of any time off that you have upcoming. Down the left-hand side, you will see a list of icons. You can expand the icons by clicking the little expand button in order to see the text that's next to the icons. That's something that I like to do. At the top of the screen, you will see tasks. So clicking into the tasks section will show any tasks that are required for you to complete in the system. So example of tasks would be things like self-certification forms if you've been off sick, or the completion of any forms that you've started but not fully submitted. So you can see in here, I have a number in my test account of unsubmitted self-certification forms, and I also have a form down here for a request that I started but I didn't complete. So that's something that we will mention again later on in the demonstration. These things will sit in tasks until either I go into the task and then submit it and complete it, or go into the task and actually cancel it. The calendar functionality is one of the areas that I think that Cezanne really excels versus Select HR. So clicking into the calendar will show you a summary of any time off that's booked in the system. It's color-coded depending on the type of time off, and a really key feature is these filters at the top. So here it's possible to customize your view so you can show either only yourself, or you can toggle it so that you can see your manager, any peers, or if you are a manager as well and have direct and indirect reports, then you can bring them into your calendar as well. So it is quite a good way of kind of getting an overview of who is working or not working on any given day. So we're briefly going to have a look at the Myself section. So this is where you would come to undertake any self-service related activities. So for individual users, that will mostly be limited to updating personal details, viewing payslips, and booking time off. So the personal summary section that I'm in at the moment is really just a screen that summarizes key information, like how much of different types of absence you've taken, as well as at the bottom it has a little bit of an employment history, perhaps different positions that you might have held over a period of time. Personal work details is where you can view and in some cases edit some of the information that is held on system about you. Some of the information, or some of the sections rather, in here, so for example addresses, they have an edit option in here. Some of the sections do not have an edit option, so there are some sections that you're not able to edit yourself. And if those sections are incorrect, then you would need to inform the HR team and we would edit that for you. If you go into any of the sections and there is not already information in it, and you click into edit, you'll have the add new button at the bottom, which you just need to click, and it will then bring up the screen you have the option to complete the information. You can save it and then submit at the top. And so that is just how you would go in and make any changes that you wanted to any of the areas in self-service. The documents section is where documents relating to you will be held. So we are transferring the digital records from SharePoint into Cezanne, and so employee files will be held on system going forward. Some of the information in your own file will be visible to you through employee self-service, but most of it will not. So most of the information is only visible to your manager, and so it remains the case that if you wanted to see items in your file, by and large, you would need to speak to your manager about that. On the positive, though, for the first time, managers will have access to both the hard copy on-site files that they hold themselves and also the digital files through Cezanne. So there are various folders here. And as I said, the information is being imported. I would just encourage people, if you're looking at employee files, to look beyond the folder that you would expect to find the document in, because I can't speak for, I suppose, how accurate that mapping process has been to put things into the appropriate folder. So I'd suggest looking through the whole file before determining that something is missing. Payroll documents is where you will find and be able to view payslips and P60s. You can filter by start date and end date, so you can narrow down your search. I can't show you one at the moment because I don't have one in the system, but it is just a case of going to this section and downloading it as a PDF. The Form Hub is where you can access any self-service forms. I am going to talk about the Form Hub in a lot more detail when we come to the managerial functionality of the system. So I'm going to skip over this for the time being. And then a couple more sections. So annual overview is just a different view of the calendar. So it's showing your calendar on kind of an annual basis so that you have a view of holidays and sickness that you have taken or are taking over the course of the year. And then absence is where you can request certain types of absence yourself, and they will be sent to your manager for approval. So by going into here and clicking add absence, you will see that you have 3 types of absence that you can request yourself. You have annual leave, and then types of paid and unpaid other absence. If you click into one of these, it's a very straightforward form. You enter a start and end date, and in this case it is a holiday absence. Save and then submit the request, and it will go through to your manager for approval. I'm not going to talk about training and skills, but in summary, this is where we can record one-to-ones and appraisal conversations, and training records and things will be brought into here at a later point in time. So that brings me to the end of the employee screens. So I will also say that for self-service, there is an app that employees will be able to download. Functionality is kind of limited on the app, as you perhaps would expect, but you can view your payslips and you can make holiday requests through the app as well. So that's positive because that's something that we didn't have before with Select HR. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go out of the system. I'm going to log back in. I'm going to log in as a manager, and we're just going to talk around the differences in the functionality of the manager view. Okay. Right. So I'm now in the manager view. You will see that it looks kind of largely the same to all intents and purposes. Down the left-hand side, I have a lot of the same things that I saw before. By clicking into my team, I am going to see a list of my team. And if I click into their name, it will take me into their profile, and I will be able to manage them in the system. The myself section is where you will view exactly the same information that I've just viewed on the previous when I was logged in as the previous person. So this is how you would do your self-service in here. So in the My section, you're referring to yourself, and in the My Team section, you are going to be managing employees that work for you. So I'm going to go into one of these employees. So as I said, in the employee view, the actual menu options that you see mirror the options that you see for yourself. So as you can see here, these are the same sections that we were looking at previously. In the personal work details section, it is a little bit more limited on what the manager can view about the employee than they can view about themselves. But the key information, things about kind of their work deployments and their addresses and communication information, is available to be viewed by the manager. As I said as well, the documents section is there for all of the employees, and the manager will have more visibility of documents from the personal file than individuals do themselves. Okay, so let's have a look at the Form Hub, because the Form Hub is a little bit more important if you're a manager than if you're not. So here in the Form Hub, you will have the option to initiate forms, but you can also view forms that have already been submitted. And so here I can view a few different types of forms, and some of these forms have an Add New button, and those are the forms that I can self-initiate. So for example, here I can see a leaver form, which I can self-initiate. There is also other forms. So in here I have the probation outcome form. This one doesn't have an Add New button. That's because some of the forms are initiated as part of a process. So I can't initiate the form, but that form will be initiated automatically by the system as required as per that process. So there's a bit of a mixture of self-service and automatic forms in here. But the key thing is that you can go into each form and view it, whether it was something that you initiated yourself or not. The two most important forms on here are the leaver form, which is the form that you would use to notify HR that somebody is leaving, and also the return to work form, which is where you would capture the record of somebody returning to work following a period of sick absence. So let's have a look first at the leaver form. So if I click Add New, it will take us into the form, where I can complete and fill in the required information. So obviously the fields with the little red star are the fields that I have to complete, and then there are some optional fields as well in here. One quirk of the system, and this will apply to whenever you are doing kind of any type of form or filling in any kind of request on the system, is that in order to see the attach button, you have to save the form first. So in the case of this leaver form, if I were to fill it in, at the moment, I don't have any option to attach anything to it. Oops, I want to fill in all the forms. But once I have saved the form, I have the option to attach files. So in the case of the leaver form, we do ask people to upload a copy of the letter of resignation, if it is a resignation. And so this is where and how you do that. So you can attach it to the form after you have actually saved it. And once all the information has been submitted, then you can click the submit button, and that will go through to the HR team for processing. I will come on to the return to work form in a moment when we start to talk about sick absence. But there is one other important form that you won't see here on the Form Hub, and that is the contract change request form. So this form might well come into the Form Hub at some point in the future, but for the time being, the contract change form remains as is. And so you will find a link to it on the Cezanne homepage. So there's a link to the contract change form here. There is also a link to the form in the contract change guidance document on the Halo self-service portal as well. So I would now like to talk about absence. So absence can be processed in Cezanne in two ways. As I've said, an employee can request certain types of absence via their self-service. These requests will then come to the manager via email and also as a task in the system. So the email will have a link. You go into the link very much like you do with Select HR. You're able to view the request and either approve or reject it. The second way is for the manager to manually input the absence. So most commonly this would be for sick absence, but there might be some other types of absences that managers need to input from time to time as well. So if I go into my test employee, in the absence section, you will see a summary of the different absence plans that apply to the employee and how much of that absence plan has been used over the last year. So here I'm seeing information relating to annual leave at the top, sick absence, and then there are quite a number of other paid and unpaid absence plans here. The reason that you see quite a few plans is because they are split between the types of plans that individuals can request themselves versus the manager can enter versus the HR team can enter. So that's why it is a little bit of a messy view, unfortunately, but predominantly when we are in the system, we're going to be focusing on annual leave and sickness. If we click add absence, the first thing that the system is going to do is ask us which plan we are wanting to add to. So this is exactly the same as we saw in the previous view when we were doing it as an employee. The main difference here is that managers have the option to add sickness, and also they have a few more options if we were to go into the other paid and unpaid absence plans as well. So today I'm going to add a sick absence. So I'm going to select from the sickness plan. And here I would just complete the information and press save. Now, if it is an open-ended absence, and obviously we encourage people to record somebody's absence as soon as they go off sick rather than once they return, then you can click the open-ended sickness button. What that does, as you've seen, is it grays out the end date. It still puts an end date in there, which I accept is a little bit confusing, but as long as you have selected the open-ended sickness button, then that means that that is recorded as an open-ended absence. And I can save this absence once I've entered an absence reason, rather. The system will warn you if an absence overlaps with something else, so it is useful to get that warning. It does allow you to enter something that overlaps, so that is just something to be conscious of. So that is now saved. That has been entered as an open-ended absence, and in a minute I will show you how to go back in and close that absence down. If you receive fit notes, then these should now be added directly to the absence as attachments. So we can see at the bottom here, I have an attach files button that would not have been showing until I clicked save on the absence. So as I've said before, you need to save before you see the attach files button. With fit notes, as I attach them, there is a secondary tab called the sickness details tab. If I wish to receive reminders about when the fit note is due or is going to expire to remind me that I need to ask for another fit note, then there are some fields here that I can use to say what date I receive the fit note and what date the fit note expires. That is optional. It is not something that you have to fill in, but if you think it would be useful for you to be able to keep track of that information, then that is there for you to use. So I'm now going to go out of this absence and I'm going to show you how to go back and we can close the absence down. All right. So if I wanted to close this absence down, I would just go back into the absence section and I would need to find the relevant absence, which I would do by going into the relevant absence plan. So in this case, we know that it was a sick absence. So I would click into the sick absence plan and I would identify which absence it is that I needed to close down. So it was this absence, I remember. So this just takes me back into the same screen that we were in before. I have the option to make changes, but in this case, because I'm wanting to close the absence, I would just untick the open-ended absence, add in the appropriate end date, and then click the save button. One thing that is worth remembering is that managers are able to edit absences in the system, provided that the absence has not already been closed and paid. So once an absence has been paid, so effectively we're talking about absences that are, I guess, more than a month ago, then you will be able to go in and view the absence, but this will be grayed out and you won't be able to make any changes. In those cases, if something needs to be edited, then it has to go to payroll and they will do the edits. So there is a Halo form that has been created where you can raise any of those requests. It will go to the payroll team and they will make the change. The same also applies to deleting an absence. So managers have the option to edit absences. You don't have the option to delete absences from the system. So once the sick absence is closed, the employee will receive an email asking them to log into the system and complete a self-certification. We will cover off return to work conversations in a moment. I will just take a moment to just show you, because I know somebody asked the question around it, around recording something in hours. So when you enter an absence, once you have clicked save, you will see that you get the total duration and the total time populates. Here you have the option to view hours, and here in this section you have the option to edit the start and end times of the absence and change it. So if the absence needs to be for a specific number of hours, then this is where you would capture that information and change it into hours. All right. So following the closure of an absence, then you should also complete the return to work conversation. And if you're listening, hopefully you'll remember that you can find the return to work form in the form hub. So in here, if I click add new on the return to work form, then it will bring up the return to work form and I can capture the information. It is worth pointing out that the return to work form is a lot more comprehensive on Cezanne than it was on Select HR. It is more a kind of a form to guide the conversation and kind of promote having useful conversations around, why the person was off and any challenges, that they're going to face when they're coming back. So I would encourage you to actually complete the form with the person actually there, because it's going to be quite tricky, I think, to do it or have the conversation, then remember and transfer all that information into the form. So in terms of demonstrating functionality, those were actually the only things that I was going to show you on this demo today. So the key things, I suppose, that we wanted to cover off is, logging into Cezanne and finding your way around. So both for your individual accounts, so self-service, and also as a manager, what you can see in self-service. So viewing and editing your personal details, where to view pay slips, how to request annual leave, viewing an employee's record. So if you're a manager, going into the documents section, viewing the documents that are in there. I should also actually add that if you are a manager, you can upload documents into an employee's file. And so into most of these sections, you will see the upload file button. And that is where you would upload a document if you wanted to add something to somebody's file. You can't add to absolutely all of these files. I think maybe the other folder is a restricted folder, but most of the folders you will have the option to upload to as a manager. We talked briefly about notifying HR that somebody is leaving, and also how to notify HR if somebody is changing into a new role. And then we've talked around recording different types of absences, and also mentioned briefly around changing it to record hourly absences as well. We also covered off adding medical cert and also doing a return to work conversation. So, well, that brings me to the end of my demonstration. I hope you found it useful, and I hope that you're feeling positive about the change to the new system. So as I said, it is going to be going live from Monday, the 6th of July. You will receive an activation link, and you will also receive a username and password. But remember that you can use the single sign-on link that was mentioned at the beginning of the call. So that username and password will be required if you are using a personal device to log onto the system, but not if you're using an NAS device. If you choose to download the app, then that is obviously up to you, and that is also where you would use the username and password that you were issued with